In a court ruling U.S. versus Fishbein, a man subjected to potential incineration while wearing another man's suit is entitled to $10,000 worth of airline tickets. It's an obscure ruling, but a very important one. To Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond. Reach in there and grab my wallet. It's the one with Bad Motherfucker on one side and Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond on the other.
Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another spectacular, fantabulous, absolutely unbelievable episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and today on Thrive Loud, we have a corporate coach, financial fixer, and stirring speaker. This individual helps you see differently so you can business differently, money differently, life differently. He has helped hundreds of successful entrepreneurs and wealthy families build, protect, and transfer significant wealth. The strategies he has deployed are symbolized by the unique challenges and abilities of the tallest, and his personal favorite animal, the giraffe. I guess the Tyrannosaurus Rex doesn't exist anymore. I would figure that would have been taller, but I guess it's a dinosaur. They're gone. See what others can't and reach what others won't. Thrive Lab listeners, I bring you Chris Jarvis. Chris, how are you today, my friend?
I am doing fantastic, Lou. Thanks for the wonderful intro. It was even better than the way my mother wrote it.
Yeah, I know. When I called her up this morning, we went through it about 4 or 5 times. And at that point, she said, listen, you just take it over. I don't want to talk about my son anymore. No, bring it on. Anyway, so Chris, you got a pretty cool background, pretty good stuff. And I love the be the good, believe there is good. I like that little sign behind you in the background there. Here's what I want to do. I want to do a little rewind here. I don't want to go all the way back to your room because I was talking to your mom about the bio early this morning. But I want to understand from your perspective, Chris, how the thing you're doing now became your gig.
So good question. I was the kid who took all his toys apart. I wanted to know how things worked. I guess there was a curiosity that came with that. Not I guess. I'm certain there was a curiosity that came with how do things work? I was, until you get into school and you start really being challenged, I didn't realize that I was gifted. I was a mathematician, could solve problems very quickly, see how problems worked, and almost like you're playing a game of chess when everybody else is playing a game of checkers through life. And so what is the thing happening 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps down the road, which in school, it was really cool to finish math class early and have an A+, and all that was fine. But it wasn't until later in life that it was using that problem solving to realize how to solve work problems, tax problems, complicated problems, things that worked around business. And then fast forward through, like many people, parents get divorced. You have all that crazy stuff like oldest kid, was it me? What did I do? You start becoming really super sensitive to other people's needs and feelings and that crazy empathy. And then you realize later in life and in business, it's the psychology and it's the people that are way more important than the products and the prices and the profits and the other stuff. So the place where I am now, it's using that math brain, that problem solving, but piecing together some financial stuff, some business stuff with an enormous overlay of there's people involved in all these decisions. And so kind of weaving all that psychology, business, math, it's almost like I had 3 different segments of my life, but now it's all, it's all woven together, and it's hard to know when you're pivoting from one to the other.
So you were really good at making sure that you had, broke all the toys down. But at some young age, there were certain toys you probably didn't break down, and those would be the little toy animals. When did your passion for giraffes kick in? Was this a thing as a kid? Did you see one at the zoo?
No.
Did you go to Africa?
I did go to Africa. It was actually, that wasn't the moment, but I did I shouldn't say bucket list. I was 33 years old, but I had watched animal shows with my dad growing up. A buddy and I had both planned to go to Africa and bring our dads. His dad got sick. And so we brought our dads in 2003 and we went to Africa for a month and did the photo safari thing.
Yeah.
And that was my all-time greatest vacation. Nothing even close. There's a huge gap between 1 and 2, and I've traveled 40 countries. I mean, I've been around a lot. But where it all became, the giraffe thing became something, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago or so. I got kicked out of a company I started. I got divorced, got kicked out of a company, started second guessing whether or not I actually had anything left, and was I the loser everybody seemed to think I was. You start second guessing things and figuring out, well, what am I? Who am I? What do I do? And I went back to all these clients I had and people I'd worked with and asked the question, who am I? What do I do? What do you get when you work with me? What's different? What's good? What's bad? Full blown, ask all the questions, trying to find some answers. And what I got from people was almost universally, people said when they got done talking to me, they were looking at things differently.
Okay.
That I gave them a different perspective. I found a way to look at things. And I knew that from business school. When I went to grad school, guys would say, you always tell us what we need to focus on for this group project. We do the project in a third of the time of everybody else. We may not get an A, but we're not spending countless hours on projects. You had a pretty good feel for what's important and what's not. And it just became this whole perspective thing. And I thought, okay, if I'm helping people get a better perspective, what is that about? And then I start doing some research into the giraffe. And I'm looking up, I have a new company because I've got kicked out of my old one. What's the image going to be? And everybody wants the shark or the eagle or, the T-Rex, as you pointed out in the opening of the show. They all want to be at the top of a, apex predator type situation. But being in business and consulting shouldn't be a shark type mentality. That's the wrong image. And I started looking at the giraffe, and it was all about being super vulnerable, sticking your neck out, breaking free from the herd, not being migratory. And then it goes further and further. And I have a new course and a new book, Be the Giraffe. And it's like 12 cool stories about giraffes that nobody knows, not just that they have a tall neck, and how those things apply to life. And so it became, wow, this giraffe thing about you have vision and you're constantly looking. And some people call that dreaming and being disorganized or not being focused. But it all seemed to hit. It just landed on me like a ton of bricks that I can't find one more totem, one more symbolism, one more piece of anything that doesn't seem to hit even deeper into who I am as a person.
Listeners need to know there's an amazing image behind him which says "Be the Giraffe," and it shows the evolutionary from, ape to the early man to the more developed man, and then it evolves to a giraffe, which is pretty brilliant, by the way. And even at the angle of the giraffe moving onward and upward, which is kind of why Chris is here on Thrive. I would imagine that there are a lot of people out there that are able to help people see things differently and almost in a contrarian way, or have this unique way of problem solving, which is something you've been doing for a very long time. As it relates to the specific work that you deal with, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of limits in helping people grow the way they think about money or the way they think they work. This can go in many different ways. Chris, how do you pick the lane that you help people focus on thinking differently about?
Usually it starts with, what are you most sure of? And then you can start chipping away at that foundation. No, it's, okay. I don't do it to prove that I can. It's like many people who just have a gift. I was listening the other day to Howard Stern interview Charlie Puth, who had talked about doing a collaboration song with Elton John. Yeah. And he said Elton John came over to his house, asked where the piano was, and he pointed him to such and such keyboard. And I'm not a pianist, so I won't get the name right. And it wouldn't matter to me anyway. And he said he sat down. He said the song is 3 minutes. He said Elton sat in my living room for 3 minutes and 10 seconds, and laid the track. He just looked around at the surroundings and sized me up and got a vibe and laid the song down and got up and shook my hand and gave me a hug and he left. And that was, and so I'm not trying to compare myself to Elton John, but there's when somebody says they want something, a lot of times, if you're a consultant and it sounds like that's in your lane of something you can do, you quickly go into all the benefits and the costs, and I'll help you get that. And I'd say the thing that I've done differently in my whole career is I've asked people, why do you think you need that? And really ask, it's not about providing answers as much as it is asking questions. And I've been a top salesperson in the boring life insurance industry numerous years. I do it part-time, and I only do it because clients who have paid me to do other things just ask, well, if I need this, who should I get it from? It's like, well, I have people who can do it for us, and like, I'll help you design it, but okay. It's not, I'm not excited. There's nothing exciting about it. I like launching businesses. I like raising money for nonprofits. I like starting new companies or doing really cool new things. I love teaching. I really love the teaching and speaking. I don't love, all right, so you place some financial product. The point of that example is it's so boring and it's a commodity that's no different whether any of 2 million people who are licensed in the country sell it. And what allows somebody to sell something that's exactly the same if somebody else sold it? And it has to come from, if the product's not going to be different, it has to be in the delivery.
Right.
And so all the answers come from the questions you ask. And I've just asked questions, well, why is that important? Why is that important? Is there any other way to do it? Why do you think that's important to you? Or what would be more important? Again, playing that chess game, instead of just talking about the next move, it's, well, if you did that, but then it caused an argument between your two kids after you died, would that be okay? Or is it more important to do this thing that would allow the business to continue and allow your family to still want to spend time with each other? And so some of that is just realizing that not everything is always about money, not everything is always about profit, that there's always people at the end of this. And most advisors who are really good at technical stuff focus on executing that thing, but don't ever think about the feelings that people might have.
Right. The interesting question I have for you is, I was going to use the drink your own Kool-Aid example, but I was trying to figure, I guess, does the giraffe eat off his own tree? I couldn't make the analogy, but let's just go with this as it is, applying the same rules that you help other people with. Were you one of those that was able to figure out how you were doing it for yourself first and then be able to teach others how you were doing it? Or there's a different way that you treat yourself in helping you grow your own business and, business differently, money differently, live differently, all of that. Was one a result of the other, or has it been consistent throughout?
No, the life of an entrepreneur is the only thing consistent about it is the inconsistency in it. So I could have a year where my taxable income is $2.5 million and have a year where my taxable income is zero. Yeah. Just because I was doing a lot of product development or I was whatever it was, or I just wasn't making money, or I was working on long-term things. So there's nothing consistent at all. I would say for me, the only thing that's been consistent, well, there've been a couple things. One is my dad was a pro baseball player, which on the positive side teaches you that the impossible is possible. On the other side, I could never live up to it. So nothing I do will be as interesting if I've got I have 17 books and I've spoken in 10 countries and I've made a lot of money and launched a lot of companies and given a lot of money and raised a lot of money for nonprofits. But it's interesting. I mean, I'll sit down and watch the World Series tonight.
I won't watch the World Series tonight. It's too painful to have to watch the Phillies. I'm a Mets fan. And the Astros, who everyone in this town in New York, where I come from, hates. So it's just too much pain. I'm rooting for the Astros. So
everybody in every town that's not Houston is rooting against the Astros. But but this whole idea of it's not enough, that it's so part of it is chasing that. Some of it is chasing my own ghost of what's going to be enough, or what's going to be, how do you make an impact? Because I've seen that. Some of it is being super disruptive in that, again, he had played for the Red Sox. So if I had a Red Sox hat on, I'm never going to wear one in Boston or in Rhode Island ever, because other people have them on, but I might wear it in San Diego or in Houston or in Zimbabwe. Like if there's nobody has it on, I'm interested. But if I had it on and 5 guys walked in with their hats on, I'd take mine off. Like I just don't have any interest in being like everybody else. So that part of the giraffe, not wanting to be part of the herd, not wanting to just follow everybody else. My natural instinct as a kid was, I grew up in Boston, but I became a Laker fan because everybody was a Celtic fan. And being a Laker fan, I was born in 1970. So that was the heyday of the 80s. And I got into a lot of fights in school because they'd be playing in the finals in May and it's hot and I'm wearing my Lakers jacket because it's the only Laker piece of clothing I have, and it's, but that was part of that was definitely to be different.
So this is interesting because I'm a little bit like trying to decode this here and say, okay, look, we've got somebody that looks at things differently, has been successful in different walks of life, but is always trying to take that different path and stand out. I like that. And specifically the what others can't reach and what they won't reach. The purview analogy, the view that a giraffe has of that unique view that nobody else has from that angle or that height or be able to reach the things that others can't reach. Helping people transform to see your mindset, to get into the way that you think. Share with the listeners here what you do when you work with the clients that you work with to help them make that transition, because there is nothing harder in the world than to change the way people usually behave or think. Like, okay, for example, wearing the Lakers jersey in Boston might be suicidal, but also is a different way of looking at things that not everyone will be able to adapt. So how do you get them on that page?
Yeah, so you must have been an attorney in a prior life because that question.
No, I married one. I only married one. That's what happened there. So
yeah, you had 4 questions in one question. But the big thing is always getting to the end of what solution are you going to provide and work backwards. And so people who talk about they want more listeners, they want more followers, they want more likes. Why? So I can do more what? Why? But what is it to make more money? For what? Let's get to the end of what you really want and work our way back. And at the end of the day, the big thing that I constantly coach these young entrepreneurs and startups and students who all want to become billionaires is you can be a billionaire if you provide 20 billion of value for somebody else. Right. Like you've got to create the wealth and then you can get 3%, 5%, 10% of that. You can't just take it from somebody because they will hit back. So you have to find some way to create value. So with that, I get people into who are you trying to create value for? Can you do it with a new product? Can you do it with a new distribution? So can you take a different road? I'm building a financial firm, which I already sold, kicked out of one, sold another, have been on the board of a handful of others. The firm that I'm building now, Beyond Wealth, that I'm sitting on the board of, I'm not working every day in. The whole idea there is that we're working through non-traditional channels. So trying to help people like attorneys and accountants reach their wealthiest clients without having to use financial advisors that they just don't want to work with because they feel they're too product driven or whatever it might be. So can I go through an unusual channel? I was working with an insurance group the other day, and my idea was find a wellness company because they created tax savings for these organizations they work with. And I said, find a wellness company who wants to sell its wellness plan and let them use your product as an add-on, which will then save the company taxes to pay for the thing that they're trying to sell them. So a question I often ask is, in a business owner is, have you figured out who has more to gain from your success than you do? And if you know who that is, then you have a business. So what I mean by that is Intel, when they did the chips and it was Intel inside, Dell Computers is selling computers with Intel on the inside. Dell has more to gain from selling a computer than Intel does.
Right.
So they're excited about, I'm going to find all these companies that want to sell their hardware, and I'm going to give you I'm going to give you something to put in it. So you're going to be out there marketing like hell, but every time you do, you're selling something of mine. That works for me.
Right.
Or if it's a politician, I'm working with the National Coalition for Safe Schools. It's a nonpartisan thing. It's not about guns. It's just about helping kids and teachers work through mindfulness and other things. That find politicians that need to run on something and need to get people's attention and get them to promote this cause because they just had a shooting or they just had a near shooting or whatever it might be. Just find somebody else who's really excited about what you're doing. And if you find that person, then you've got somebody promoting you at a higher level, which will help you tremendously. If you don't know who that person is, keep looking. And that question I learned from Jay Abraham was, when you're trying to grow your business, ask, what do people buy before they buy your product or service? What do they buy after they buy your product or service? Or what do they buy instead of your product or service? And that's where you should grow. because it's still the same person. You're just catching them a little earlier, sticking with them a little later, or not necessarily blocking, but you're charging a toll on the other road too, if you can be involved in all those things. So it comes back to the questions of who are you working with? What do they really want? Do you understand them? And if you do, then when we did our first, it's a long answer, I know. When we did the first business for doctors,
it's your answer. I don't care how long it is.
Well, we went to every. So when I did a business plan competition in business school, people said, "You're never going to be successful because you're providing financial solutions to doctors, and there's millions of people. They're all trying to get doctors. You'll never get to them." Okay. I wrote a dozen books for doctors. I wrote in 200 medical journals. I spoke at thousands of hospitals and medical meetings. Doctors would call me because we became the only financial column in magazines that were all clinical. So other people would say, why don't you write in Forbes? People are looking for financial advice in Forbes. It's like, well, everybody in Forbes is writing about financial stuff. So I'm just one of many. But if I'm in ophthalmology news, I'm the only financial column in ophthalmology news with a whole bunch of eye surgery stuff. And so we did that to stand out. We'd be in Today in Cardiology. We'd be in gastroenterology and endoscopy news. Like, you can go ahead and make whatever rectal reference and joke you want to make, connecting those together. But that's like, we went in places that other people weren't.
Yeah.
So
which totally makes sense, because that's figuring out the middle part there. You've mentioned it twice. So I want to know, you said you were kicked out or booted out of your previous company, even the company that you founded.
Yep.
Was this them not thinking differently, or them not understanding the perspective of how valuable it can be to think differently?
Both. When I told a classmate of mine from grad school that I was in a nasty legal battle, and he asked me a really interesting question, which was when I started talking about what a mess this was and how awful these guys were. And I'm going down the whole, bitching and moaning and whining, complaining about it. And he asked me, what would they say happened? I was like, that is a great question to ask in any conflict that you're in, to just stop and ask, what's the other person say? Like, what the other person say happened? Because the three sides of every story, mine, yours, and the truth, so, and it was, their side was, I've lost it. I'm not interested in the current business. I've given everything I can give, and, it's time to move on. The truth of me being bored with the current model, that part was 100% true. Yeah. I was looking at new things and new marketing channels and new stuff. And I don't think they were thinking big enough. We were essentially building Facebook for doctors as a side project, which we thought if we could get 5% of those doctors to hire our firm for financial stuff, that would work out great. Their view was, well, why don't we just take all the financial stuff and not let anybody in? And I said, well, then it's not an open community and it's not as attractive. But they looked at it as, well, we should just keep it all. And I'm thinking, well, that's not how a community works. When you let the community decide what they want for content, what they want for providers, let them, if they want to grade us poorly, then I guess we won't be, we should improve our service.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. So, it was a blessing. Like everybody I've ever told for the last 15 years, anytime somebody told me they got fired, they got divorced, they had a breakup, something happened, I always say the exact same thing. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's the next step in your life, and you're moving onward and upward.
Well, somebody doesn't appreciate you for you. Whenever somebody breaks up with you personally or professionally, they volunteer to you that you're not, like, not only are you not doing your job, they don't even think you have the potential to do your job. That's cutting somebody from the Mets, from, the Giants, from whoever your team is. That it's, if they cut you, that is, we so don't want you that we're willing to pay you to play for somebody else. Like, that tells you they really don't think anything of you. And so if that's how somebody feels, nobody deserves to have to interact with anybody who doesn't believe that they have no value currently and no potential in the future. Like, you just got a gift.
No.
At that point.
This is what I would love to know, and I know our listeners would think about this too, and you kind of tapped upon this. You do a lot of things, which is great, and that flexibility of doing all of them, whether the development piece of it or the selling of it, and there's lots of different hats that you can wear, and the roles that you play in helping people achieve this and helping yourself be the giraffe, if you would. Before, during, after, which one of those spots do you like being in most? And to clarify, is it coming up with the idea in the beginning part, kicking it off in that during part that goes in, and then seeing it succeed? Which one of those hats is the role that you like playing in most, Chris Jarvis?
I like coming in. You might find this crazy. As a little background, when I write a book, the problem I have with writing a book or creating a course is that if it's mine, I have no boundaries. I get to write anything and everything I want. I'm on 17 books, I'm on hundreds of articles. I can write anything I want. I can go in any turn I want. I can throw a Mets reference in any paragraph I want. No one's going to tell me I can't. And as a result, there's a lot of stuff swimming around in my head. But if I'm writing marketing copy or a tagline or something for you, I'm limited by you, your voice, your stuff. I can't change it. So all of a sudden I have some boundaries, and it's almost like you're bowling with the bumpers up, where it's going to be really, for me, it's just easier that I get locked in and I can really get specific. So I think the thing that my greatest moment is when I have a head tilt. So comedians want the laugh.
Yeah.
I like the head tilt where I can just visually see the people in the audience or in the meeting or in the workshop or sitting down with me and I'm standing at a whiteboard or we're just chatting at the desk, whatever it is, when some idea is just so heavy and it plants in their head that their head tilts to one side with the, like now that just hit.
Yeah.
And I love that moment of helping them see something that clicks in that, ooh, now I get it. This is my thing. And so I love the workshop where I can get somebody from, I've got a lot of things that are going really well, but they're just not all this good pieces moving. So it's not the initial, hey, let's just come up with an idea for a movie.
Yeah, it's somewhere between before and during, I think, is where you're at, in that window, right?
Or it's minor success. It's like there's some forward momentum, but it's not all tied together. And if I can find the tagline, the focus, the elevator pitch, the logo, the imagery, how to lay out, basically do for people what I did with the giraffe, because I can take anything and find a giraffe metaphor and story, like anything at this point, because I've been working on this and looking for it my whole life. But to help somebody figure out that we're going to use the heart, and it's going to be, then we have all the different, we have the 4 different chambers, and we can play with this. And now we have 4 sections to all of our teaching, and I just love that. I love the making connections. You mentioned that at the beginning of the program, that you make connections, and I love the connection part of connecting what the employees want, what the customers need, what you offer, how you do it, and then just really do something to piece it all together and make it look fantastic or feel right. So when someone's like, wow, it's that goosebump moment of, oh my God, you figured it out.
Yeah.
And like that part I love. And I've never done a strategy session or a strategic planning session or annual workshop, or sat on a board of a company and not had the ability to do some of that. And it's just fun when they're like, wow, where'd that come from? It's like it. Dude, I don't know. It just did.
I love asking guests this question, Chris. I want to see where this goes. Look, throughout your career, as spoken up here, there's ups and downs, but on a genuine path like the neck of a giraffe, it's mostly onward and upward, and you've been thriving most of your career in different avenues. 17 freaking books, amazing. But we all have those days, as you know, where we don't quite kick on all cylinders and things aren't necessarily rolling the way they should. Chris Jarvis, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or maybe which individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
I think the first, as a mathematician, I'm going to go addition by subtraction. The most valuable thing I've learned about not having your best day is to accept that it's not your best day and just be okay with it. Where I used to beat the hell out of myself oh, you lazy bastard, oh, whatever it was. There was always some critique on how I was that really difficult coach to myself who never gave me a break, and everything was, all stick, no carrot. And I just learned to just accept that there's days that I might as well have just come in and flipped the desk over and gone and left because I got nothing done. Mm. And so some of it is not beating myself up and realizing that one of the chapters in the new book is balance is BS. And the idea that balance is something everybody sees. It seems to be universally accepted that you need balance in your life, but I contend you never have balance.
Right. Because
everything that's worth doing takes time. Nothing takes a little bit of time spread evenly over a long period of time. You're going to have to focus on something. Every time you do something, you're not doing everything else in the world. Yep. There's fear of missing out is more BS because there's 7 billion people doing something that you could be checking in on, and you just never gonna stop looking at what other people are doing because you can't get to all of it. It's such a waste. So I'd say for me, the big thing is not beating myself up because I had a bad day, because I didn't get stuff done, because it's like, oh, that was an awful day. And try to tell myself, oh, odds are, even though they're independent trials, odds are tomorrow will be, I'm not going to string a lot of really awful days together. And then go back to things that you've done well. I mean, a little trick I learned from Canfield and working with him years ago was go over that list of things that you're grateful for, the things that you want, and either revisit the positive things or revisit the things that you're trying to accomplish and go back to, I do a lot with visualization and meditation. That's a big part of it. Of what is it you want and why do you want it, and start visualizing that you're there. My dad tried teaching me that. I taught that lesson at the Venture Cafe at MIT, which was my coolest speech of my life because I had my dad before he passed. I had friends from childhood, high school, college, business school, and the neighborhood, and people I had met from outside stuff who all happened to show up. And while I was doing all the mic check and all the other things, they happened to find each other, and they were only talking to each other, yet none of them knew each other.
That's cool. Yeah, you're connecting, all your worlds are coming together, right?
And it was so cool to watch because all my worlds, and I was like, this means this is the thread that's been pulled through the fabric, right? And you just pulled it and everything tightened. And I thought, wow, here's somebody I met when I was 47, with somebody I met at 37, with somebody I met at 27, with someone I've known since I was 7 days old. Like, this is what a cool thing this was. And I remember coming home, my dad saying, because I was using a lot of this visualization and talking about entrepreneurship and how they see things differently, like giraffes. And he said, I tried to get you into mindfulness and positive thinking and visualization 30 years ago, and you'd have none of it.
Oh, God. Everyone develops at their own pace. Those baseball players, I'll tell you.
That's right.
All right, so let's do the admin part of this show here. Can you do me a favor? Chris, share with the listeners all the places people can find you, websites, URLs, things we should know about you, and we'll put it all in the show notes, but it always gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
So we have chrisjarvis.me is the website. You have chrisjarvis.me/wild factor, which is my new assessment. It's normally $20, but everybody here, if you can remember the word thrive, you get it for free. So this is.
I think we should make it Thrive Loud. Can we make it Thrive Loud? That'll make it easier.
We'll make it Thrive Loud if you want. It's Thrive right now, but I will add Thrive Loud.
We're going to make it Thrive Loud in case you start talking to the woman who has the Thrive show on. I mean, you're on 75 podcasts this month. I mean, God forbid. So go with Thrive Loud. Then.
Thrive Loud. We will get that done. So that's the assessment, which assesses your life in the areas of health, relationship, career, finances, and fun, and tells you which animal you are. You could be an eagle, an elephant, a dolphin, a monkey, a penguin. Chris Ray Jarvis on Instagram, and I think website. I'm on LinkedIn. It shouldn't be too hard to find.
Awesome.
And the podcast, which I can't change the name of this for you, Lou, but it is Surviving Ain't Thriving, which is my TED Talk this year. It came out in March, and it is the most watched TED Talk in the world this year.
You go, man. How many views has it had? That's pretty impressive.
2.8 million, I think.
Go you. Well done. Like that. We'll put a link to the TED Talk in your episode page too. So listen.
And it's only 14 minutes. So for somebody who struggle to get through all of this, they can.
Nobody struggles through this show, Chris. Make yourself clear. People stay to the end because we're about to the fun part.
That's right. All the fun stuff and all the free goodies happen at the end. Exactly. Now, I think that the reason why a lot of people have checked it out is because I think a lot of people feel like they're surviving. They're
Yeah.
they're just keeping the wheels on the bus, or they're afraid of making mistakes, or they, just it feels like it's a grind, and they're tired of seeing everybody else post all their foolishness online with their watches and planes and all the places swimming in these pools 100 stories above the ground in Abu Dhabi and things. And it's like, the reality is life is hard, and people would like to thrive, and so maybe that's why that video has been picked up by, it's been watched by a lot of people.
When a lot of people have asked me when we came up with the show and why was thriving such a thing that we drill down to, and when people aren't thriving, what they do, to your point earlier. And what I find the most interesting is it seems that the number one answer in some form or fashion of how to get people thriving is movement. And keep moving. And I keep thinking about everything that you've done, and what, move on to the next thing, go on to the next opportunity, go to the thing that keeps you interested. And I think that's more than survival. We need to move to survive, but we really do need to move to thrive and take things to that next level. And I think that's what you've been doing. So
awesome. It's a good observation, and it's, you've been doing this a long time, and you know what you're doing. So I'm not surprised by that, but that is, every time there's been a problem in my life, and I've certainly had my fair share, many of which I brought on myself, but it has always been, I have very seldom spent any appreciable time looking back at what it was or bemoaning what just happened and said, all right, well, let's go ahead and deal with this now.
Yep.
And some would say, well, you didn't deal with it, you didn't grieve, you didn't. Well, maybe, but at the end of the day, we got to get through this. Does it really matter why your business is falling apart, or is it more important that we figure out how to, keep this thing afloat, or bounce back, or whatever it is? Just let's look forward, because you got to stop at some point. And probably from all those days of hiking trips with my old man, and let's get to the top. When we get to the top, we can look down and think about, we'll think about the journey.
You ready to go down Fun Street? I know you've been here the whole time, Chris, but are you ready?
That's every day.
So, listeners need to know, as I decoded in this conversation, Chris and I are the same age. And he shared with me what his two favorite movies were. I didn't know how old he was, but when I saw what the movies were that he suggested were his favorite movies, I said, this guy's the same ilk of me. Can you share with the listeners what you shared with me were two of your favorite movies that you said one or the other?
Fletch or Pulp Fiction were probably the two.
Okay, so let's help both people. We're going to do this in the fun order. Why does Pulp Fiction connect with you?
I laughed so hard at times in that movie, and I found I was 23, 24 years old, and I remember getting a copy of the screenplay and just reading it to myself and laughing. Yeah. And it was great. My dad found it funny. I found it funny. Whenever somebody answers a question that they shouldn't know the answer to, my response is check out the big brain on Brad. We use the references all. Anytime somebody from the UK or Great Britain throws out Zed, I'm like, Zed is dead. So what is that? It's like, don't ask. It just there's so many. If I see blueberry pancakes on the menu, there's just so many references, and I found the movie to be brilliant and hysterical, and
my producers are going to have a tug of war here, and I'm going to solve it for them as they're listening to this. We do a lot of unique openings to the show for those that are loyal listeners to Thrive Loud. We have professional voice artist Steve O'Brien read a lot of movie quotes, and these movie quotes are always a little bit punny to Thrive Loud or to me or whatever it is. And that movie, Pulp Fiction, we often do a lot, but can you share with the listeners what your second movie is? Because this one is now going to confuse our producers as to what the hell to open the show with. Yeah,
Fletch was made in the 80s, the original, not the John Hamm version. Yep. Chevy Chase, the greatest role he ever played, and all tongue in cheek. He's an investigative reporter who stumbles on a shady deal, and it is one smart-ass, quick-witted joke after another, and we watched it in high school during the summer. Our day would be as follows: we'd get up, meet at my house, watch Fletch, then we'd go play basketball at the park, then we come back to my house, we'd order a pizza from Tommy's Pizza, we'd eat the pizza, we'd watch Fletch again, we'd go back, we'd go play basketball again at the park in the afternoon when it started to cool down. And if we had more time, we would either go to the dog track or we'd watch Scarface. But we would watch.
We went a little darker after that point. I got you.
Well, for sure. Well, we laughed so hard at that point. But that was we watched Fletch at least once a day for an entire summer, maybe twice. So yeah, it's really hard not, if somebody starts a quote, not to be able to finish, because we have just
to this day I have never ordered a steak sandwich and said I'll have a steak sandwich and a steak sandwich.
That's right. That's right.
There's
Bloody Mary steak sandwich steaks. I just had the Underhill. I just used Underhill the other day. I went to a very exclusive club for somebody who had a prospect, whatever, wanted me to meet at his golf club. And sure, if I take my car, can I have a name? And I said Underhill, and the kid didn't get it. And it was like, perfect.
I actually ran into the actress who was the female lead in Fletch about 5 years ago in California, and ran up to her and I said, "Excuse me, can I borrow your towel? My car just ran into a water buffalo." I couldn't resist. And she goes, "You're like the 16 millionth person that's done it." I go, "Good."
Like, I don't know what other line I would say to her. Well, there's so many lines, some I can't say, but it's the
you can say anything you want in this show, but you can't say you fill you in. I know that might be a little bit.
Yeah, In-N-Out Burger.
Exactly.
But Gina Davis was in that movie with
I love your body, Larry.
It's so great. So anyway, yeah, those are the movies, and it's there's a bunch of other ones, but that's a
great story.
Like, how do you say best movie? How do you say best movie? Because there's so many good ones. But
what we like to do, just to help you out, Chris, is, and we want to know what as you heard me ask it, why does the movie connect with you? Because everybody's got a reason, and we know that it's too hard to pick a favorite movie. And by the way, we've even said streaming show or certain things like that, depending on, some people aren't movie lovers. But what we've learned on this show, one, it's fun to talk about these movies, but it is really interesting. I mean, some people have deep connections to these movies like you can't believe. Like, a movie was filmed where their childhood home was, or a family member had passed away, and this was the movie that brought them back or made them laugh, or this was something that was really close with the first movie they saw with their significant other. So it's really interesting. We connect on so many different touch points in our lives, but things that we love to watch that make us feel good, which movies do most of the time, connect with us on a different level. And those stories that you just said are reasons why they work. So awesome.
Well, the part of Fletch, the one part of the summers watching Fletch was like idiots. We would also, I lived in it was with my dad in an apartment, and it was, 3 stories. We had the first floor, somebody had the second, somebody had the third. And so you had the driveways in between, the garage and the back. And we would throw water balloons from between the houses out at cars as they were coming back when we were just bored. But of course, we're throwing them from our own house, which is not the brightest thing in the world, because you've truly given up where you are at that point. But those are just fun stories of, things you did when you were in high school with guys that I haven't,
until they showed up at your TED Talk or whatever it was at MIT.
That's right. That's
right. So let's do this. We're going to do the speed round here, Chris. I'm going to ask you something. These are things that lift you up, motivate you, make you feel good. They basically make you thrive. And I just want the first thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
Go for it.
Okay. Of late, recently, a song that you've been listening to, or maybe one that pumps you up.
Ain't It Fun by Paramore.
Okay. A favorite food that's not a dessert.
Meatloaf.
Favorite dessert.
I would go with that's an interesting one. Bananas Foster.
Okay. An activity you wish you did more of.
Hike.
An activity you wish you did less of.
Podcasts.
Oh, stop. Stop yourself. I don't fall for that shit for a second there, Jarvis. Okay.
You figured out when you asked me Chris or Christopher, everybody calls me Jarvis, including my wife. Things I wish I did less of. Television, maybe.
If I could snap my fingers, Chris Jarvis, and you could be anywhere in the world, where are you?
Namibia.
And you've been?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
I've done Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Botswana, but Namibia is the next one.
Last question, totally not knowing the answer to this. I mean, I know that you see giraffes in zoos all the time and they're all in Africa. Are there commissions to make sure that giraffes are safe around the world? I know that's always an issue. Maybe you could speak to that. Probably someone who cares about them more than most.
Sure. Giraffe Conservatory is a solid one. If you're looking to spend an outrageous amount of money on a vacation, go to the Giraffe Manor, where they actually will like stick their heads in through your window and eat food.
I have a friend who did that one. I saw that. Yeah.
I thought about going there for the book launch of Be the Giraffe and thought it would be a hell of a thing to rent it out.
Pretty cool.
I think at $2,500 a night per room, it might be. Those are for very high end clients. Extraordinarily such. I mean, giraffes are actually endangered at this point. They just went on the list. So, I mean, anything that's pro preserving the planet as best you can and just appreciating the animals that are there. That's something that, I mean, I love the national parks. I spend a lot of time, or try to spend a lot of time out there. To me, nature is the only place I feel really at home. Yeah, it's the church for me that I want to live in a place that I can walk and not see another man-made structure. If I could do that, then I know that it's my fondest memories with my dad. That if you're looking for that Barbara Walters moment, I guess this is it. And that's, my dad was of that generation where they never talked about feelings or anything else. So as I got into my 20s and you start going into therapy and all the other stuff, my parents were divorced and I got beat up every day. And, I went through all the terrible stuff. And then I wanted to get back with them, and you go through counseling and, why'd you leave mom and all the other, all the questions that pop up. And, I told him I basically in my 20s, like a fool, wanted him to be more like my mother and be more warm. I wanted my mother to be more logical and pragmatic like he was. And then at some point you get smart, at least I did, and appreciated them for who they were. But to build a relationship with my old man, because he was super competitive and into fitness, we would plan hiking trips, and we'd go to a national park for a week, and we do it every year. And we would do one epic hike like Half Dome or the Grand Canyon or whatever it was. But we would hike every day, morning and afternoon, different hikes. But we'd talk about our training and getting ready for it and how much are you working out and where you're going. And so we got out in nature, and we would just walk for hours. And at some point you had to talk. And so my fondest memory on those hikes was the guy who never would talk about his feelings, never talk about his relationships, never talk about anything. When you walk somebody for 14 hours, like they're going to talk at some point. And it was, so for me, I have this moment of that thing changed my relationship with him. And I had a relationship with him that nobody else on the planet had, but I worked my ass off to make that happen. And so, the big lesson there for thriving was, if you want something to happen, what can you do? What is that 100% responsibility? What is that? How do you go meet somebody where they are with what they want to do? Like, he wanted to be fit and wanted to do stuff. We both like nature. So it's like, all right, we'll make that we'll go be in that place that you want to be in. And then if you're in a place you want to be with somebody who wants to be in the same place, it's hard to think anything but a great interaction isn't going to take place.
Very true.
And I think that thriving part of meeting your customers, meeting your employees, meeting your partners, like, where do they want to be, literally and figuratively, just be aware and try and meet them where they are.
Chris Jarvis, see what others can't and reach what others won't. Great to have you on the program, my friend. Everybody check it out. We'll put all the links in the show notes, and truly an honor to have you on the program, sir.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.